Welcome, everyone. This is Rebecca Smith-Aldrich from the Mid-Hudson Library System, and this is another Engage webinar for our series on community engagement. Today, we're joined by Liz Potter of the Phoenicia Library. Liz has been the director there for how long now, Liz?
I'd say about 4 or 5 years.
And you've had an eventful 4 or 5 years, I would say, which we're going to talk about this morning, and will help everyone get a sense of not only what you've gone through, but how your community has not only come together around your library, but is now making the best possible use of your library as you move forward into the future. So today we're going to talk about the Phoenicia Library, a little bit about its history, some of the things it's been doing in terms of getting the word out and engaging with their community, both in person in real life and online, because they've been doing a really good job on Facebook as well as in their library. So I want to give you a little look at what the library and the staff have been up to and really talk about some of the techniques that have been working to catalyze that community engagement that's really making this library one of the busiest and well thought of in our system. So Liz, could we start off by you giving the audience a little feel for what Phoenicia is like and what your library is like?
Thanks, Rebecca. Sure. So Phoenicia Library has always been kind of the classic, cozy, quirky little library nestled in a tiny rural community in the Catskill Mountains. We serve about 3,000 people, and our area of service is 119 square miles. We allow dogs, people come in and eat their sandwiches, patrons occasionally receive ice cream if the staff is in the mood, hugs or a shared tear are always available. It doesn't really matter in our library who you are or what you wear or how you talk, you're always welcomed. And crankiness, abruptness, curmudgeonliness, totally fine. Because our town is really kind of, or at least the library is very Twin Peaks kind of meets my side of the mountain or Little House on the Prairie. And it's kind of, the community is a mix of kind of rugged individualists who build houses, wait tables, plow snow. And then we have another kind of cross current of second homeowners from Manhattan and now Brooklyn. We have dreamers, Buddhists, artists, and it's kind of become a hot destination because of the town's authenticity, I'll say. And I would say there's a fair amount of poverty here that's important. And the basic philosophy of the town is really kind of live and let live, but when needed, people come together.
And would you say that your library reflects that also?
Absolutely. The staff comes, it's a small community and the staff comes from this community. And we have people who've been here for 10 or 20 years, and then we have newcomers. So it's a mix of people who are kind of these rugged individualists and then people who are new to the area coming up from the city.
That was an awesome description of your community. I feel so lucky that I get to come visit your library and meet the people that make up your community. And that was probably the best description you could have done of the type of people I've met as I've come visiting your library. Even before you were in your new building, you got a sense of that. I always remember the first time I came to your library and I'm sitting very properly in my suit with my paperwork laid out in front of me, getting ready for a consultation. And like 4 people walked in that were not staff. There was actually nobody but me in the library at the time. They made themselves at home, put their feet up on the table, had their dogs with them, and I'm like, this is a different kind of library.
Absolutely. I mean, I love it. It's the only place that I could ever fit in, so it's a natural match.
Now, your library suffered quite the tragedy a few years ago. Your library suffered from a fire, right, that gutted the building, and you were actually on the board at that time, right?
That's right. Unfortunately, Phoenicia has a reputation for both floods and fires, and since I've lived here in 2001, the main hotel burned down, the bank, and unfortunately the library in 2011 with it, which was a total loss. And I was on the board at the time, and our director, Tracy Priest, at the time was leading us through this. And And essentially what happens, what I watched happening through this fire and also through the floods that really destroyed parts of the town during Irene, is that this town of real strong individualists that converge into a lot of dissent, and we even have chairs thrown and people spitting at each other at meetings in my time. This is at town meetings. When these things happen, people really, really come together. It happened during the flood, and it certainly happened for us during the fire. And Tracy really, within 1 week, had us with an operating library in a space that the town lent us, an old doctor's office. And people just came pouring in with donated books, helped us set up new computers, inmates built shelves, and we were ready to go because of this community.
And so once you got your temporary location set up, I know you engaged in a pretty intense capital campaign and really decided to make the most of your original Main Street location and go back there because that's what the community was asking for. So when you guys started that capital campaign, were you surprised at kind of how quickly that came together? Or maybe it didn't feel quick to you?
It was about a 3-year process. I think that the key ingredient really was on the part of the board at the time, there was a sense of unstoppability. They would never stop until this building was built. And I think that was shared by the community as well. They must have realized how important this library was to the town. So we had bake sales, dances, just hundreds and hundreds of very small donations, a few community angels coming in. We had grants, insurance, and it all came together. When I look back on it, it does seem that it was remarkably without difficulty, although we did have some very ferocious dissent in the form of lawsuits from our 2 immediate neighbors. But it just seemed like because the board and the staff and the community was unstoppable, that we would work through it, and we did.
And as a result, you have a really wonderful new space that puts people at the center of the design and is also highly energy efficient by design. As you moved into that new building, it was super impressive to see to see, the great work that got put into the design, the thoughtfulness, designing around the people, just like you were always talking about how people come together, and you gave them a space to come together in, which was really, really cool.
Well, I think that the design process began with our former director, Tracy Priest, who was with the board, which I was on at the time, looked at the last community survey in 2007, and the #1 complaint was that the library was extremely claustrophobic, and there was nowhere to gather, nowhere to have programs. And Tracy really led the way on this and said, let's make a smaller, tighter, fresher collection of books. Let's not be burdened by our books so that we have stacks everywhere. And the building committee ultimately took what felt like a radical step of eliminating the stacks, reducing the collection size by 1/3, and only having bookcases on the side of each room so that each room could be used as a place for the community to gather, work, or have programs. And I think it really worked out. I think it was really, I hear that this is happening more and more, but it was at the time felt very, a little risky.
I think it really paid off for you. It's a beautiful space that seems filled more often than not when I'm paying attention. Because I noticed that you took not just the opportunity of that capital campaign to bring people in to help think about what the future might look like, but you wanted them not just to think about the building, but about the services and programs that would be available there and make sure people were benefiting from all the hard work and love and sweat and tears that went into creating this new space. I noticed that you did a great job of capturing people's attention about programs and services around that same time and as you opened up the new building. So it wasn't just about the building, it was about actually being a library. Can you talk a little bit about some of the methods that you felt really worked to get people's attention beyond the capital campaign and the grand reopening of your library?
Yes, I think that the fire, in a sense, and the capital campaign afterwards brought the library out of the shadows in the community. It was something that was loved, but we don't have a town newspaper. People didn't really know much about us. And we had, 3 or 4 years where we were one of the biggest things happening in town in the newspaper as we came back from the fire. And so we began to using really pretty simple methods that I was taught at Mid-Hudson Library System to build our base. The number one thing is road signs. So we put up we had our former board president, who's a sign maker, make signs that can be changed and put it right up front of our library so that anyone who's on Main Street will see what's happening. Our Tracy Priest had already started a good email list, and we attempted to expand this email address organically without opting in all our patrons. We feel that that's just a decision. We don't want to invade people's spaces, but we put out notices on paper and sign-ups and so on, exhorting people to please sign up for our email list. And then we've put a lot of effort to a monthly email describing all our programs and including pictures of what's happening and little tidbits, personal tidbits about the library. And then, of course, I quickly realized that Facebook which is something that I'd never really used, was a very inexpensive but effective way to get the word out. So I spent a fair amount of time expanding our institutional page, developing my own personal page, and having some other sub-pages within it. And I think that's really paid off.
Cool. I definitely want to talk to you more about your Facebook presence, but before we get there, this caught my eye one day when I was visiting your library, that this was a big sign that was on your circulation desk. I think, was this last year, 2015, that you had hit,
yes.
you had hit a new high?
Yes. We put it up in the spring of this year after we had our statistics for 2015, and that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen since we've reopened on Main Street. Is we have a major uptick in our traditional use as a lending library. We're at our highest circulation ever.
And that's super interesting, because I'm pretty sure you said you cut down the size of the collection in the new space, but you're seeing higher circulation with a smaller collection. Is that right?
Yes. So the circulation was up 50% over the year prior in 2015, and if you look at kind of the longer range trends of 5 years, it's up about 7%, which is, put in the context of probably our region where it's dropping slightly, it's still, an increase. And I think it comes down to what Mid-Hudson and Tracy Priest was leading us towards, which is that a better displayed, fresher, more curated collection, it's just easier for a patron to walk in and find something that they want to read that night.
Amen. I'm smiling and giving you 2 thumbs up. I know you can't see me. But I think it's important to note, when you gave the context of 5 years of, well, there's slightly a downward trend, within those 5 years was also when your collection burned to a crisp and you were dealing with a temporary collection, a temporary space, and then got into your new space and saw, even above and beyond where you had been previously, these great increases with your new space, the new collection, the new way of thinking about how to design your space and get people into it. And I think that responsiveness that you showed in designing your building and your collection is one of the major strengths I've noticed about your library. I know last summer, this time, I was sweating coming to your library, trying to get there on time to do some focus groups for you, because it seemed like your board really wanted to talk about what's the next chapter of our story here? It's not just about the building and the rebuild. We've now got this amazing group of people who are watching and caring and using our library. What's next? So you guys engaged in both focus groups and a survey last year, right?
That's right. I think that we noticed that the ground was shifting underneath us. Not only were the circulation stats up, but our programming attendance was the highest ever. It had gone up, I think, 180% over the year prior. And we obviously, by the way people were behaving, had a sense of what they wanted, but we wanted to confirm what were their priorities, and so that we could prioritize given that there are finite financial and staff resources. So we had you come out and lead us through this process.
And you guys acted quicker than any library I've ever seen. I think within a few weeks of me giving you guys the final report of what we heard in the focus groups, I was already seeing you take action. I saw immediate response, particularly in the area of the hours. You heard a lot of people, I believe, say that they were coming up on the weekends or getting ready for the weekend, and by the time they got to Phoenicia, the library was closed.
That's right. So the board immediately decided that we should stay open for 3 hours on Friday nights. And that's the first time we've had evening hours in my memory. I think also there was the sense that people were saying, there's nothing, this is a great town, we have a lot of vacationers come up here, but what is there to do on a Friday night? And I had never thought of the library as a place that would answer that question, but in this new building, it's actually relatively easy to provide things that the community can do. So we have movies, readings, music, a computer helper who comes and fixes computers, and I think the attendance has been excellent. Sometimes it's standing room only. So clearly, we listened and we responded, and the community has come.
And you guys really are doing awesome with your programming. And it seems like not just on Friday nights, you've really seemed to speak to what people are interested in and what they want to come to, which is something that I know a lot of libraries struggle with, getting that attendance at library programs. I just threw together a couple of the things I've seen over the past year. Can you talk a little bit about why are people flocking? Is it just because you're offering programs at the right time?
I think it's a larger question than just the programs, because they're flocking even when we don't have programs. I mean, we have the rooms are filled when we have a formal program, but what I'm finding now is that people are just coming here to spend the day to work or sit and read or talk to other people. I would say again, I think it's because we're responding to people. I think people feel like this is their library, this is their home, because literally they built it with their donations and their sweat. They know that the books around them have been really, in large part, chosen by them. That's something, we feature sort of a patron picks clipboard, and I comb through the statistics, the circulation statistics. And I can't tell you the number, and the selection of programs come from people. I think that if I had any word of wisdom, because I've certainly messed up on this, is that let the patrons pick the programs. Until you have patrons coming to you and say, I need help with Social Security, can you help me? I can't figure out this Obamacare, what is this? I really want to play Mahjong. Can we do something? Wait until you hear that and then create the programs. I've definitely erred in sitting in my office and thinking what would be, quote, good for the community, and those programs typically are much less popular and sort of die out.
So it's almost like you're starting knowing you've got a built-in audience for what you're going to offer.
Yes, I think that's really important. It's probably a trick we all use, that that if you're going to do a book reading, make sure that that author is local, has a lot of friends, has their own network, and it's sure to be something that people in the community will want to come to and value.
I've also noticed that you really try to feature local. You feature local authors, local technologists, local musicians, and that seems like a pretty cool feature of what you're doing too. That it speaks to that sense of community and the support that local people have for each other.
This was something that came out in the focus groups, actually. I think maybe somebody brought it up in one focus group, and then people really expanded on it, saying that they loved this community. They were proud of the people that were here, and the artists, and the people, you know, the people that work in town, the police officers, and that they wanted, they didn't want some famous person coming from out of the area. They really wanted to learn about their neighbors, and I love that myself, and it's really been successful. I really don't get requests for, you know, a big famous author to come. Instead, someone will say, "Oh, our town clerk just put together a book on toys from the 1970s. Why can we have her come and bring some of her toys and talk about this?" And that's what our community likes.
That's awesome because it really speaks to that whole mantra of local supports local. I think your library really embodies that with your programming and how you do your planning. And I think it might also be part of your success, perhaps on social media. I've noticed your Facebook page has some of the highest engagement levels I see amongst Mid-Hudson member libraries. And I know it's because you're very clever and you are very funny also. But it seems like you also find ways to feature like local celebrities almost in the stuff you're doing, which makes your messaging that much more interesting and engaging.
Thank you. To be honest, I'm actually not, I would not describe myself as clever or funny, but I do, I do see the humor in things, and I think it's something that if people want to go in this direction, that do not be afraid. The humor will come out in what you're doing. I don't tell great jokes. So, what I'd say, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the why I feel it's been successful. A little bit of this I learned when I first became director. I took a class, I think probably with you, Rebecca, online about building your base, and I learned a lot there, and have since just read a little bit and through trial and error. I think that one of the most important things is that whoever's in charge of Facebook has to have at least 2 accounts running in the service of the library. You absolutely need to have an institutional account, which is a little more formal. And then you really have to have a personal account under your own name. Now, if somebody already has their own home personal account, I would really suggest they create a second identity with their name, maybe a different photo, and then use that in the service of the library. The reason, the institutional account is almost like a website in my mind that travelers or people who don't know you that well will come to and see what's happening. So you want to make sure that you have, you know, fairly complete program listings. And I also recommend with an institutional account, I had been very cheap in this regard, but I'm glad I finally gave in last year to occasionally promote something for $5 or $10. That gets really good results.
So you're using
But
the Facebook ads to promote things?
Yes, with the institutional account. So the Phoenicia Library Facebook page, because what Facebook does is, probably most people know this, it really represses anything that's institutional. So you can have great content, but it'll be pretty hard to get into people's feeds unless occasionally you invest $5 or $10. But the most important thing is actually your personal account. This, if it's something new you're creating solely for the library, like I did because I don't use Facebook otherwise, this is where you want the most action happening, because the algorithm on Facebook does not repress your posts. Um, the other thing is you need to be acting like a human being. If you're acting as Phoenicia Library, people do not feel engaged. It's a building. They want to engage with an actual person. So I have Liz Phoenicia Potter is my personal page, and they know that there's a person behind this. Um, th then you need to engage with your community. On my Facebook page, I have, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe 1,000 community members as my friends. And I actually become involved through the language of Facebook with them and their lives. For example, someone goes on a vacation to a beach, and it's someone I know, and it's a beautiful picture. I'll hit like, or I'll comment like, "Hope you have a great time," or say something funny. I don't. It's not an artificial thing. I should say that this, gets to something deeper, which is, I think that librarians really come to love their community and their patrons, so that you will naturally want to be engaging with your community, and in return, they're going to be engaging with you. And it's really important. This is one of the, having your own personal page where you're actually hearing what people are experiencing in their personal lives, or other businesses or institutions are doing, or the problems that they're facing, or the triumphs. That's your best kind of research that will filter into your brain unconsciously of what's happening in your community. It's really essential, I think, if you're going to be responding to your community, that you use this tool.
You had used a word when we were talking about this earlier about how important it is to be authentic in these communications. And that sounds like what you're describing, that you feel like you're being more authentic as kind of the leader of the library, the director of the library in the Facebook realm, than just speaking as the institution that is the library.
Yes, I really think that human beings, the Homo sapiens really need and are finally only interested in other people. It's not about the books and the programs. It's about the people that are searching for those books and attending those programs. And I think it's really important to personally connect with those people so you can be a better librarian.
Oh, Liz, I'm cheering over here on my desk in Poughkeepsie, because what you're really talking about is that it's about the people, not the stuff, not the service, but the people at the center that you're serving and those that are doing the work of the library. It makes me think of that report that came out from the international organization OCLC, which is called From Awareness to Funding, and how libraries take, people paying attention to them and actually translate that into a yes vote or a donation. And they said it actually boils down to, quote unquote, the librarian. How people feel about the librarian at the library is really most closely tied to whether or not they'll financially support the library. So I think you found like a magic mix there as a small library, and how to connect with your community in a really authentic and real way that builds that human connection that makes them want to be a part of what's going on at your library, which is just brilliant.
Thank you. I would definitely tip my hat really more to the front desk staff, who are the pillars of this. We have people that love this community and the individuals in it. It can be communicated in so many different ways, and you do not need to be a charismatic extrovert. It's just someone who's there for their fellow person, and it gets communicated, by the look that you give to someone when they walk through the door, a nod, a hello, even very basic things such as I have a staff member who will bring in a little bouquet of flowers and just put them on the desk and where patrons work. I like to, in the middle of the day, go in and clean the bathroom to send a sense of welcome.
That you care about the people who are coming in.
Yes, exactly. I think that's what we all need.
So I think you've really helped paint a picture here of what's going on in Phoenicia. And while, of course, Phoenicia is a very unique place, and I think every library feels like their town's pretty unique, Phoenicia might be a couple steps above the usual uniqueness scale, perhaps. But I think you've really helped to build an environment and an atmosphere that really speaks to who the people are that you are serving. And that's reflected back in their usage of your library, their how pleased they are with what you're doing. And we just want to say thank you so much for sharing what you're doing and what's working well for you, because I think you've shared a lot of things that are replicable for other libraries in the system. So I hope you don't mind, but I'm putting your email address up here in case people have questions for you. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off for today?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying those nice things. I I think, I could summarize what has helped me, and I'll just say it again: listen and respond to your community. Uh, please use humor. Life is very short. In order to be funny, you're going to have to take some risks, and you'll fail. I would say don't be afraid to go to the places in the real world. In other words, honor your community, births, deaths, and terrible losses. Just avoid being simply an advertisement trying to commodify your patrons. And just remember, Rebecca, like you said, this is really about the people, not the books and the programs that they're using.
That couldn't have been a better ending to this little session we're doing here this morning, Liz. Thank you so much.
Thank you.